Hey guys, I'm back, welcome back to the channel, and in today's video I'm going to be doing a movie review on Michael. This is of course a Michael Jackson biopic. It was released in 2026. It stars Jafar Jackson, Nia Long and Coleman Domingo. In this film, the story of Michael Jackson's life beyond the music is told, tracing his story from the discovery of his extraordinary talent as the lead of the Jackson 5 to the visionary artist whose creative ambition fueled a relentless pursuit to become the biggest entertainer in the world. Now, me personally, I knew very little about Michael Jackson before seeing this. I am not a Michael Jackson fan. Obviously everyone's heard his songs, but I was never a listener of his. So going into this, I was very much just, hoping to be entertained and be invested in the story as someone who knew very little about him. It's been very interesting following this film recently and keeping up with all the discussion surrounding it and stuff. Obviously there's been controversy surrounding this film, with it not choosing to cover any of the controversies surrounding Michael Jackson, and obviously this film was split into two parts, had reshoots, all that stuff. There's been controversy surrounding this film. The reviews have been very negative. Similarly to other music biopics, people are saying things like it just plays everything too safe and takes too simple of an approach to its subject and to its story. And I just wanted to see this film as soon as possible so that I could see, what I think of it and all that kind of stuff. So without further ado, let's begin with this review. As I said, people have been saying things like this film plays everything too safe. And, I see these films described as like you're reading the Wikipedia page of the person that it's covering. Just too basic of an approach to its story, and it can all like feel very hollow and very just very kind of uninteresting because of that. And having now seen this film, I very much agree with all of that. This is unfortunately another one of those music biopics that just it does feel too safe overall. Again, I'm someone who knew very little about Michael Jackson before watching this film, and and with that in mind, I do think this film does a serviceable job of telling his story from, when he was a kid and was with the Jackson 5 to his glory days, the period of his life that this film is covering. I think it does a serviceable job of telling that story. And, again, as someone who was very unfamiliar with all of it, I was relatively engaged throughout it, and it does tell the story, I can say that, but it does fail to deliver a really sort of compelling version of its story. The most interesting elements of this film on a story level, in my opinion, are how it looks at the impact Michael's abusive father had on him and the way he shaped him into the star that he became, and how it looks at the loneliness that he experienced from a very young age. But in my opinion, the film didn't expand on those things enough. They didn't feel like significant enough things throughout the runtime of the entire film, and because of that, they just didn't leave an impact on me. And when you take all that into account, it ultimately is another one of these films where the storytelling is just very standard and not very interesting because of that. I do think that it plays things too safe, especially with the approach to Michael himself. There are flashes of interesting things, related to, what I mentioned, the stuff with his father and the loneliness. There are ideas related to those things hinted at in the way it presents Michael, but for the most part, it does just present him as, not a flawless human being, but as a human being who doesn't have enough flaws, and it's not very realistic because of that, and it isn't the actual character and person of Michael Jackson presented in this film is not the most engaging because of that, and that is unfortunate because he was a complex person, and the film's approach towards him isn't complex enough. With that being said, this is a film I'm interested to see how it's going to hold up when the second part comes out, because this is meant to be the first film of a two-part story, and I believe that the second part of this story is going to look at the stuff with him later on in his life, and it's going to look at the controversy surrounding him. I believe I can't confirm all that, but it would make a lot of sense for it to do that. And with that in mind, it would be quite interesting if this is a film that sort of that, you know, builds up Michael Jackson as this kind of this heroic, flawless figure, only for that to be undone in the second film. But while we just have this first film, you know, there's no telling what will happen with it. There's no confirmation that that's the way they're gonna go. And so while we just have this first film in this, you know, apparent two-part story, and we have the approach to Michael that this film does take, he's not the most interesting or engaging or compelling because of that, which definitely is a shame. With all that said, this is this does tend to be this is a trend with music biopics, but the performances are definitely strong. You know, again, I don't think that they gave him the best material to work with, but Jafar Jackson does give a very solid performance, and you know, when it comes to the physical side of the performance and the mannerisms, he does just get it right, and very interesting move casting Michael Jackson's nephew to play him. Definitely a move that paid off. Coleman Domingo is also great, doing a really good job of portraying Michael's father as this threatening and intimidating figure who very clearly cares more about Michael's success than Michael himself. Just does a really, really solid job, and the cast overall, you know, all the performances are definitely solid. And this is also, you know, you love to see this in music biopics. I think all the music sequences in this film, you know, all the musical scenes, the concert scenes, and the dance scenes, you know, the stuff like that in this film, they are genuinely all really well done, and they've done, especially when it comes to the dance choreography, they've done a really, really terrific job of replicating all that stuff, and those scenes are just generally really entertaining to watch. The film looks good, it's technically competent. There are a couple of CGI elements for animals that aren't great, but probably about as good as you'd expect them to be for a film like this, I'd say. This is a film that is going to go down, you know, has been going down so far really well with fans, you know, big fans of Michael Jackson who are there to just see a film about Michael Jackson's glory days, experience the musical scenes, experience the music, all that stuff. I think on that level, it does work, and it is entertaining enough, and, you know, it is a crowd-pleasing film, but by being a crowd-pleasing film, it does ultimately feel too watered down and too safe. This is unfortunately another music biopic plagued by the issues that tend to plague music biopics. It doesn't do a good job of fleshing out its characters, especially Michael himself. The storytelling is too basic and too standard and too safe to be interesting, and it overall feels quite hollow and quite flat. But there are strong elements here, and this is a film that entertained me more than I expected it to. And, you know, I say this about every film, but if you're put off by the reviews, you know, just give it a shot anyway, because you might enjoy it. But yeah, this is definitely a film that I didn't strongly dislike by any means. I didn't even dislike it. It just isn't a very good film. But it's not the worst music biopic I've seen. It's not terrible in my opinion by any means, and you know, like I said, I definitely do think there are very, very good things here, so I'm going to give Michael a 5.5 out of 10. Thank you very much for watching this review. If you did enjoy, please do remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you want to. If you have seen this film, feel free to let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, bye bye.